You'd think ChatGPT would come up with a really good answer on why it's good for humanity, given how important the future of humanity is to ChatGPT and its success. But anyways, I digressed. In an ever-changing world, campaigns are all about collaboration and connection. From an initial brief to the follow-through, we explore how innovative thought leadership makes a campaign's success more than a possibility. Welcome to Partners in Possibility. I'm your host, Brett Marchand, CEO of Plus Company. By now, most marketers have dabbled in AI and introduced AI-powered tools to their creative workflows. In our last two episodes, we discussed how marketers are using these tools to work smarter and faster. But one area we haven't talked about is data, an exciting opportunity for marketers. Joining me in this episode are two members of the Plus Company team, Kristen Wozniak, SVP of Customer Success, and Michael Cohen, Global Chief Data and Analytics Officer. We'll go beyond ChatGPT and Midjourney to examine how data and generative AI can improve marketing business operations and increase ROI. We'll talk about how we, as marketers, can leverage AI to better allocate targeted ad spends. We'll define a composable CDP and how it and data-centric AI will change the way marketers work. We'll also try to imagine how the future AI will look for marketers, recognizing it's impossible to predict the unpredictable world of AI.
Michael, you say something on a regular basis, and it's about the horse versus the car, where if you ask people to predict and what they want, in the early 1900s, they'd say a faster horse. No one would have necessarily imagined the car. And so I think there's an element to it, thinking through what it is that we want from the future of AI and then what will surprise us going forward. Fundamentally, I think it's important that we keep an eye on our demands, so to speak. There'll be a collection of new opportunities, new solutions to meet our demands. And by demands, I don't mean like my demands, but things that I need help answering, questions, decisions. It'll be a collection of things we don't even know what they are yet, because we can't quite yet, but hopefully it answers some of our questions.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy. I was thinking, I'm reading this book about, it's called Chip Wars, which I highly recommend. It talks about sort of the history of the, transistor and silicon chips and what it's done and Moore's Law, et cetera. And, everyone just thought it was going to be used in the beginning for the military. And it was really when people looked at it beyond that they realized that it had this incredible power. And it's kind of the same thing with AI, right? I often say to people, even though everyone is thinking about generative AI as far as producing text, and some people are thinking about it, around images, not a lot of people are thinking about it when it comes to good old fashioned marketing dollars. And I don't know, for every dollar spent on content, there's $10 spent on distribution and media. So, when you think about it that way, there's probably 10 times the opportunity when it comes to measurement and management. How are you seeing it helping with measurement, with management, and with data outputs?
The big picture here is that this sort of prediction, generative AI, whatever we want to call it, produces information, whether that's in the form of language or audio or image or numbers and data. It answers the questions that we have, allows us to do that in an iterative way. You might ask, what was my reach for men in the 65 to 75-year-old age group in Southern California, and how did they respond to a particular campaign? Like, you can layer all those dimensions on it at once. It will synthesize an answer based on the information it has. It's not required to have all the data, and the reality is that data's imperfect, but prediction can overcome that.
One of the interesting things about what you just said, Michael, especially thinking about the vast collection of clients and regions, is the data availability is so mixed. The generative AI piece starts to make it possible for clients, for people who haven't been able to engage in this space before, because they can work with imperfect data in a more meaningful and reliable way.
Right. There's that famous quote by John Wanamaker, which is, I know half my advertising is working. I'm just not sure which half. And I think one of the interesting things about AI and how it can be used in a predictive way, as you just both described, is that people can focus on what's working and how do we do more of that, and less like, is it working or not? And do I trust it or not, et cetera. Tell me a little bit about how we're using or you're using AI now, in particular, not on the generative side of content, but on this management and measurement side that we're talking about.
Really, the fundamental sort of building block of the marketplace that we aim to influence is the customer, and understanding that entire communication journey we're having with them. We know about all the challenges to filling out that story. Data that exists behind walled gardens, privacy regulations, low quality telemetry, just missing pieces. But AI or generative AI can solve the puzzle and predict what that journey looks like. And now we have a building block to be able to tell all of these combined stories about audience, creative, media, timing, different KPIs, the journey through the funnel, and do so in a way that allows us to build technologies that answer the questions we have today based on how mature we are as data and AI sort of organizations, but also answer the questions of the future that we don't know, because we've built it around the customer, who's always going to be the building block of the marketplace.
I think there's an interesting conversation here around journeys in the funnel specifically. I've struggled with the funnel my whole career, and not because, 1898, it was developed. Some stuff has changed since then. Yep. But I think more and more as the industry changes, the way we purchase things change, the funnel isn't as straightforward. I don't think we can throw it away. There's lots of categories and instances where the funnel and that linear journey does make a lot of sense. Yep. And there's other areas now where it really, really doesn't. And if I work with different clients, everybody comes to the table with their own sort of linear version of what that journey looks like. Even if it is a cycle, there's this one model. And the conversation then from the agency side specifically is, how do we then adopt our strategies and think through fitting into the way they want to talk about the customer? Or how do we encourage them to think about how we think about the customer? When in fact, we should be just looking at the customer and understanding what the customer is actually doing, and then working within that framework. And we've not really had the opportunity to do that in any kind of meaningful way to date. And so I think the AI space, we can start with, okay, these are the collection of people who've done the thing we're trying to drive forward, whether it's leads or footfall or sales or whatever it might be, and actually explore that group of people and say, what got them here? Instead of trying to fit them into these structures that may be artificial and may not actually apply to their business. Yeah. And imagine that, like learning actually from people's behavior. It's kind of a simple but novel concept.
Well, that's, it's an interesting point, because I guess this is really where AI is really powerful, right? Because it could deal with the fact that consumers and consumer journeys may start with a conversation with their friend in the coffee shop about a brand, or may start with them having seen something on Amazon and not necessarily having seen a brand campaign, et cetera.
Yeah. And Amazon's an interesting one. I was having this debate with my partner last night. With Amazon, for example, there's a whole bunch of things that you buy when you never even know what brand it was. Mm-hmm. Thinking about, sure, you can buy an object on Amazon where you know the brand and you've gone through and purchased it, but you can also buy something now where you're like, oh, I need a battery pack for my cell phone. Do you know what brand it is, or does it come from Amazon in a little plastic baggie with a sticker on it? And you never know. So the awareness, familiarity, consideration piece is actually with Amazon, not with the product itself. And how do we make sure we account for all of these different nuances in the way we're thinking about supporting our clients?
Sounds pretty simple, right? In practice, there's a lot of considerations. Now that we have a broader idea of how AI can help us understand the diverse data points that make up the customer journey, let's talk about what a great AI-centered data strategy might look like. It starts with data-centric AI, a phrase and concept popularized by machine learning pioneer Andrew Ng.
It's interesting that we call it data-centric AI. I think about it as organizing our data for the AI application. The one example of how you might think about this is we've spent a lot of time building data applications that are oriented for retrieval. So if I'm a media manager, I would like to look at, how I'm delivering impressions across media and over time and geography. And so my data engineer goes and builds a database that's arranged in this way so I can retrieve those answers. Well, if I actually want to use some predictive intelligence, that predictive intelligence would like the data arranged in a way that helps it recover that consumer journey that we were talking about earlier.
And can the AI be biased based on what data it is fed? Because we know that that's an issue when it comes to generating content or images.
Of course, AI can also reduce or eliminate the bias. So AI is the combination of the information that it takes in, and for generative AI, the supervision we put around the prediction. That was the big sort of invention in things like ChatGPT, is that the T means transformer, and this was a supervisory framework that took human input to make better predictions. Now, if that human input is biased, as humans are biased, and that's where the data comes from, of course, the AI is going to be biased. But where we know biases can exist, we can place, expert judgment on the supervisory framework to overcome things. So let's take targeting, for example. If we live in a world where we can do a really good job at targeting people that are either going to be really responsive to media, or we're trying to reach lots of people and we end up getting low value inventory as a result. In the world of measuring the impact of media, that would generate a bias that, you would either overestimate the impact of that media because you're going after high value, or you'd underestimate the impact because you're buying, remnant inventory. And there's ways to correct for that. So if you bring that sort of supervisory framework into your AI, you can overcome the natural biases that exist in data and measurement. And that's why we need a bunch of different AIs. There's not going to be some sort of general form AI, but there needs to be AI for, all the different applications we imagine out there.
Well, and speaking of data, I mean, everyone is talking about CDPs and composable CDPs. And well, let's start, Krista, maybe answer for the audience. What does CDP stand for?
Customer Data Platform. It's something our clients are talking about a lot. In some ways, the conversations that I've had around it have been people calling me and saying, I want to build a CDP. And I say, okay, why? And they say, oh, because everyone is, and I need one. To me, it feels similar to the big data conversation we were having a couple of years ago, which is I need a data warehouse, and lots of money was spent on a data warehouse, and then it sat and collected dust and cobwebs, and everyone felt like it was a poor investment. So it's all the rage right now when it comes to data conversations. And
what's a composable CDP?
Composable is this idea, CDP is new in the world of marketing, and many have made the investment and built them for specific use cases, say, to help call centers, understand what next best actions are in conversations with customers, or, in email applications. But at the end of the day, we're talking about unifying our view of the customer and the data about that. So, different CDPs have become good at different things, either the intake and organization of data, the ability to segment customers based on that data, using each for their superpowers and composing them together is the idea behind, composable CDP, and to be flexible as your use cases evolve, as you move up the data maturity curve.
What would be your advice to a marketer? Where should they start?
They should start internally by talking to their CIO or other IT tech stakeholders that are, often going to be part of these sort of initiatives, and, open the lines of communication saying, well, this is what we're trying to do as a company with our customers and with our marketing strategy. And this is the kind of data that we think can inform that. And then you have two people that are, considering all the challenges around standing something like this up. I think there's a step before that that's really important. The number of times I've had conversations with clients where we say, okay, the goal is we want to grow sales. And I say, okay, well, talk to me about that. What are you thinking? What are your actual goals? Where are you wanting to go beyond that? Mm-hmm. And the clarity on KPIs, or even just what does success look like for this company, for this client, is not something that everybody has in their back pocket. I think taking a step back and even asking yourself,
what do you want to do with customers requires some preliminary work to say, here are some of the challenges. Here's the gap in our process. Here's the thing that isn't working that we need to use communications or data to help fix. Here are some of the things over here that are working that we want to use data to amplify. So I do think that's where then Michael and I together work from, both a very technical side and a contextual side to make sure that we're all aligned on goals. Because the CIO isn't going to do that for you.
Right.
The CIO is going to help build everything and put it together, but you need to have a very clear understanding of why and what and how.
Well, maybe without naming any names, you can give us an example.
So, for example, had a client who had access to online leads, but not access to leads to the call center. So if you're looking at evaluating your media and the only KPI or output data you have is online lead generation, it's not a surprise that specific channels are going to look like they're performing better and have a better ROI because it's connected to an online activity. So you need to find a way to bring in the call center data into that conversation because fundamentally that lead, we're going to, in this case, assume it has the same value as the online lead. And you're going to end up skewing your media and your marketing plans against your online leads because of it. And this happens a lot, actually, because online e-com data is so much easier to deal with than some of the offline engagements. You see then collections of media plans optimized towards your online goals, but often those online pieces only account for a small percentage of the total. And we get in this horrible cycle of optimizing towards 5% of your success, which is not going to create overall growth.
Thanks to AI, we can now get a much clearer picture of the data points that make up the customer journey, and we won't fall into the trap of overestimating areas with easier to read data. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about how AI is going to change the way we work. Welcome back to Partners in Possibility. I'm Brett Marchand. Today I'm talking with some of our leaders at Plus Company, Kristen Wozniak, SVP of Customer Success, and Michael Cohen, Chief Data and Analytics Officer. We're talking all about data and AI. We already know that marketers are finding many uses for AI in content and creative production, but there's an even bigger opportunity in measurement, management, and data. So let's talk about how this will change the way we work and how it will impact the people in marketing agencies, media agencies, and PR. Here's Kristen.
Yeah, so for fun, earlier, I took all the questions that we thought about maybe tackling today and put them in a ChatGPT, just to see what ChatGPT would tell me about exactly that. How is this going to impact people? What's the impact that AI is going to have on marketing? And the answers it gave me were very intelligent. Here are all the different workflows that it could impact. What it's not talking about, though, is the reaction to those potential improvements or adjustments. I think the first thing you're going to see is a lot of discomfort. The folks who are experienced in the field are going to say, I would never, ever do that. And it's going to take a moment, I think, for everybody to eat a piece of humble pie or just take a breath and say, okay, maybe I need to try something a little bit different. So there's going to be a lot of discomfort at first. But I do think over time, what it's going to do is change the way in which we fundamentally make decisions. We're going to be able to your conversation earlier, Brett, around, half of advertising works, we just don't know which half. There might be a point where, in fact, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We don't necessarily know what it does. We just need to know that it's working. So how do we think differently about the structures that we have in place, the way in which we make decisions, and being okay with a little bit of risk?
Interesting.
ChatGPT definitely did not say any of that. They said it'll automate things.
Yeah, you'd think ChatGPT would come up with a really good answer on why it's good for humanity, given how important the future of humanity is to ChatGPT and its success. But anyways, I digress. Interested in your point of view on how AI is going to change the role that people take in this industry and what we do for a living and what marketers do for a living.
Where people, those that are going to be most successful in the new world are going to be able to figure out how to build on the capability of AI by bringing human judgment to the table. Because that's what AI only gains by from humans, and you can only encode an AI from humans, and that's a growth process. So as we talk to our teams and clients and agencies about how to get the most out of AI through a test and learn framework, it's this process of test, learn, and then encode things that are working in the AI to then move on to the next higher level function of AI, and people that can champion that as their role rather than I'm going to do the same thing, but AI is going to do all the stuff that I don't like to do. No, AI is going to do the stuff you like to do as well. You have to move on. And those that become good at bringing encodable human judgment to AI are really going to catapult in the marketplace as we rethink the way we organize as firms, our business models, and then the things that we can offer the marketplace.
Well, I know that one of the powerful things that you guys are working on, and one of the really interesting parts about it is being able to do scenario planning, right? How does that work?
I've been on analytics research teams most of my career, and there's a consistent trend that analytics and research teams are brought in to justify decisions. So this is what we did. Now, tell me why it was the right call.
Yep.
This was the campaign. Tell me, what parts of it were successful. So I think what you're going to see is analytics become less of an afterthought and more of a strategic input. So not using it to justify decisions, but actually using it to inspire decisions. Everybody seems to be happiest when we get to try different new things, new opportunities in the industry, first to market type stuff. And there's typically a hesitancy to do that because we can't, promise that it's going to have a return. Suddenly now with scenario planning, with predictions and whatnot, we can start to say, this is potentially what it might be able to do for us. And that's fun. It allows us to experiment. It allows us to try new things, and it allows the analytics team to come out from behind, the curtain and actually be part of the main stage instead of just being the set crew.
Yeah. I remember that tension as a client, which is, okay, that is a really interesting idea, but oh my God, that's risky. And this idea of being able to test and learn and use data to verify that it's going to work and that it's not risky, it's not going to be a waste of money is super interesting. I think it can be incredibly empowering, I think, for both sides, right?
And then even if there's a situation where it's truly first to market and there's not really a way that we can reliably predict or scenario plan around it. Okay, so we'll do this over here, and then everything else that we're doing, we're going to make sure in scenario plan and predict that we're going to make sure that this stuff, this 80% or 90% of what we're doing over here will get you your goals. So rest assured, this part over here that we can absolutely, predict with a lot of assuredness is going to get you where you need to go. So we can actually now take these dollars and try something new, and it's just gravy.
Right.
So there's sort of a sense of common security on both sides.
Let's just end in talking a little bit about some of the best practices that you guys are involved in here at Plus Company, what we're doing in general in order to take advantage of this AI revolution.
I mean, some of the basic stuff is about access at your fingertips. And it's interesting to me watching a collection of folks across the network wanting to use ChatGPT and other systems to actually help them brainstorm around a brief or a challenge, but doing it secretly. It's like, oh, I'm not actually allowed to do this. There's this sort of sense that it's like cheating still if you ask ChatGPT to provide answers. So one of the things that we've been doing is again, a collection of training around critical thinking, how to actually interpret, use, and augment some of the learnings or brainstorms that come from ChatGPT. But beyond that, in a more substantial way, rethinking measurement specifically. We know that our clients are, and quite frankly, we are too, even in an analytics team, incredibly frustrated by the sheer volume of data that comes back. And I don't mean just like data streams, but I mean a brand lift study from this group, or, a proof of concept from this group, or, a campaign summary from this vendor, trying to put it all together. And, if we're left trying to connect all the dots and still don't feel 100% confident with, the question of how did the campaign do, our clients are obviously 10 times more frustrated. So, where we've really started is how do we clean up that conversation for our clients? How do we really bring it together and make sure that we can answer with certainty, with clarity, with transparency. Here's how your marketing efforts are performing in near real time in a way that feels understandable and accessible and creates a sense of confidence. So that's where we've really been putting a lot of effort. You can do that on a very big scale. You can also do it on a very small scale. But that really is, I think, one of the biggest challenges we need to overcome and one of the most effective ways to get AI moving for Plus Company right now.
Well, listen, this has been fascinating. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for all your insights. Good luck on all the work that you're doing. And I can't wait for you guys both to have John Wanamaker roll around at his grave and say, see, somebody solved this issue.
We're on it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Partners in Possibility. That was my discussion with two leaders from the Plus Company team, Kristen Wozniak, SVP of Customer Success, and Michael Cohen, Chief Data and Analytics Officer. Before we go, one more thing to consider is around policy and ethics when using AI. With a multitude of platforms and applications, we use more than 20 in Plus Company, we need to consider consciously how and when we use AI, and how we protect our own IP as well as that of our clients and our creators.